Okay. Please tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Shannon Polchow, and I'm an associate professor of Spanish, and I am the assistant chair of languages, literature, and composition.
What first got you interested in the Step Up program?
To be quite honest with you, when I saw the call for applications, I was interested in trying to figure out a new way to change my teaching, but I really felt like I had too much on my plate, so I didn't want to initially put in my application.
Right.
But my chair asked if I would represent world languages because there were a lot of English faculty that were very interested in participating in the Step Up program. And my chair knew that I had dabbled with technology in online settings and in my classes, so he asked if I would participate as well.
How have you been changing your teaching as a result of joining Step Up?
For me, while I enjoy incorporating the technology into the classroom, what it really has done for me is be more open to my students' ideas, in that I don't necessarily require certain programs I don't really require certain programs within my classrooms. I kind of give more choice and more availability to my students. So for example, with presentations, I won't say, okay, you must have a PowerPoint and you must do this for your presentation. I give my students more freedom and more choice to be more creative in the projects that they turn into me now.
Right. What have you found most rewarding about how your teaching has changed?
For me, giving up control in my classroom and seeing the projects and what my students have been able to do on their own, I think has been most rewarding for me. Because now my students seem to have, my upper division students in particular, seem to have more confidence in giving presentations. And while presentations seem to be difficult normally in a classroom, my students are doing it in a language that they don't normally speak. And so being able to see them succeed and have a little bit more pride in the product that they're creating has been most rewarding for me.
So what have you found most challenging about the different way of teaching?
I have found that as I create and incorporate more technology into my classrooms, I find that the Wi-Fi system here at USC Upstate doesn't exactly allow me to do some of the projects that I want to do because it tends to be unreliable. And so while I was initially gung-ho about including technology into my classrooms, the more that the Wi-Fi failed here on campus, the more I kind of backed away from using technology.
Right.
And I've also found as well that as we're using more devices within the classroom, there seems to be a digital divide with students, in that some students have the programs and some students don't. And so it's really difficult when I come in and want to do something with my students and their devices, and I can't because we don't all have the same devices.
No.
And I found that some students don't even have smart devices, so that's kind of difficult to work with as well.
So, how do you think your students have reacted to a more technology and intensive course?
With my lower division students, my Spanish 100s and my 200s, they don't seem to be very interested in it as much because they seem to they figure that Spanish is hard enough to learn, and they feel like technology is just an intrusion into their learning. My upper division students, however, have really embraced it, and when I don't use technology in the class, they're asking for it. So I found that the technology has allowed my students to speak the language and interact in the language and interact with me outside of the classroom more than they were in the past. And I have found that the level of my student presentations, because in the past my students would come in and just read straight off of a PowerPoint in Spanish because they weren't comfortable in their own language, in the Spanish language. But now with technology and opening it up to allow them to be more creative, they seem to be more confident in their ability to speak. And so I'm not getting presentations with them just reading off a piece of paper or reading every word off of a PowerPoint. I'm actually getting them talking in the language without the use of notes, which for me has been great.
What are the most significant effects you've seen resulting from teaching and learning with digital information and communication technologies? And can you share any specific stories that demonstrate some of the effect?
I found that my students are, as I said before, my students are more interested, I guess, in learning Spanish and communicating outside of the classroom, which for me that's really difficult because in order to increase their language skills, they need to be communicating more in the language and they need to be doing it outside of the classroom. So I have found that a lot of my upper division students are tweeting in the language, they're asking more questions in the language, and they seem to be just more confident. If I'm not using technology in the classroom or outside of the classroom, they're begging me to do so. I find that my students are having more conversations just among themselves outside of the classroom through our Facebook page. We have a closed Facebook group, and so they are not only posting and talking and conversing about things that are happening in the classroom, they're actually looking for real-world applications of the language, and they're having conversations in these private Facebook chat rooms, or they're tweeting about it. And I see that the programs that I am bringing into class, they're actually continuing with them in the next semester and beyond.
How do you keep up with the advancements in technology?
Even though I don't like to tweet, I've been keeping up with Twitter and just looking at different ways people are incorporating technology in the classroom. I follow a lot of teachers who are teaching foreign languages and involved in technology, so I follow their Twitter stream. I find that when I'm going to conferences now, I'm looking more for the technology-based panels as opposed to maybe some of the literature panels, just to give myself an idea of things that I can bring back to USC Upstate to try to use in my classrooms.
Okay. Since the Bring Your Own Device initiative started, have you noticed a difference in the number of devices used by the students in your classroom? I know you talked about it earlier.
I think that, if I'm not mistaken, the Bring Your Own Device initiative started really to roll out this semester. And I found that as I started using more technology in my classes last year, I found that more students were willing to bring their devices and bring them out and use them in the classroom. So I'm not sure if it's necessarily the Bring Your Own Device campaign that has brought more devices out, or me actually trying to incorporate technology into my classrooms and having the students see me use it. They've decided that they're comfortable using their devices as well.
Do you use a device while you're teaching, and has it affected your teaching in any way?
Initially, I tried to use a device while I was teaching, and for me, I think it did affect my teaching because it freed me up. I was using my iPad along with Apple TV to connect to the system, and I found that it allowed me to walk around the room a bit more than I was. I wasn't stuck at a whiteboard just writing my notes, and it allowed me to interact with my students more and more. But the Wi-Fi here on campus started becoming an issue, and so I found that the more I planned lessons around technology, and when that failed, I found myself more disappointed. And so while I was initially gung-ho about bringing devices into classrooms, I have backed away from that a bit just because I don't know how the Wi-Fi is going to work. Right. So in my particular classrooms, we still use the devices, but we use them more as resources as opposed to actually interacting with them. So we'll look up our online dictionaries, we'll look up questions that have come up in class, and that, using those devices, have sparked conversations with the students, and that's great. But I find that as we bring more devices to campus and the Wi-Fi continually fails, that I find myself personally just backing away from planning lessons around technology.
In your opinion, how useful is the BYOD initiative, the Bring Your Own Device, for your students, and what are some advantages and some disadvantages?
Again, I think it's great that students are bringing their devices onto campus, because initially, for a very long time, we've always said, put your cell phones away, put your cell phones away, put your iPads away, no technology. But in my situation, I'm actually teaching the students how to use their devices in a way that they can navigate the Spanish language better. And so for me, I want their devices out, and I want them using them, and I want them to communicate. So we're using the resources that we have online, and we're using their their devices to find out more information in class as we tackle, for example, this semester literary texts. And in the way that the devices have sparked conversations in classes, I'm all for. But the disadvantage, again, is it seems as though sometimes the more we put more emphasis on technology, we might be creating a digital divide.
Right.
Because we don't all have the same devices, and so that's kind of difficult to maneuver. And that's really the only disadvantage I see at this point, is just it seems as though we have two different levels of students, those that have, I don't know, the same devices as I do, and then those that just, you know, they don't have a smartphone, they don't have the money to buy the devices, so
Right.
how are we making them feel included in this bring your own device initiative that we have here on campus?
Looking ahead 5 years, how do you see that Step Up and the BYOD initiative affecting the way we experience teaching and learning?
That was probably the most difficult question on your list. I think, and I really don't know how this would affect USC Upstate. I have noticed a trend just from this first year in that there seems to be more acceptance of technology, and the students, in my particular case, I do notice that students are bringing the technology that they learn in some of their other Step Up classes to my classes. And that has been really fun to see. For example, I teach 101 online, and one of my 101 online students is taking the programs that he's using from his math teacher in the Step Up program and trying to wow me in his presentations in my online class. And so hopefully within 5 years we'll see maybe more digital literacy among our students. We'll see more understanding of how students should conduct themselves online and more appropriate use of the technology. As for the campus, that's a very good question. I'm not really sure. I think the pendulum swings back and forth, and in 5 years maybe we'll all be teched out and need to swing back the other way, but hopefully we'll all be a little bit more digital literate.